Welcome to another episode of Out of the Blank Podcast. Vince, it is a pleasure to have you back on the show. It's been 2 years, and through that 2 years, I have tried my best to understand the Kennedy assassination to only come out to the point of saying I know nothing. It's very complicated and complex, and it's got various twists and turns.
Yeah, I really appreciate being back on. It's been too long, Ravi. Sorry about that. Yeah, really like the last appearance, and you have a good reputation in your show. I know a lot of people have been on, and yeah, JFK assassination is very complex, and it's not aided by the fact that there are, wild theories out there, speculations and whatnot. There's a lot of good scholarly work being done on the case by a lot of good authors and researchers like Jim Eugenio, Gary Aguilar, Dr. David Mantic, and others. And like if you see Oliver Stone documentary JFK Revisited, especially the lengthy 4 hour version, the 2 hour version is very good as well. You can see a lot of scholarly work done there. But the internet's teeming with photo, image, and interpretations and things like that by well-meaning amateurs and so on. So you got that kind of doling thing. Then I said, Robbie, there's not a day goes by, or virtually not a day goes by, why don't get some well-meaning person, not a researcher, saying, Vince, I think the driver shot Kennedy. And you're just like, brother.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a convoluted case. There's no doubt about it.
Do you mind reintroducing yourself to everyone out there listening who might not have caught your first appearance? Then also exactly the Secret Service focus, how you got interested in just looking at the Secret Service, because it's the most detailed work. I mean, you're the overall authority when it comes to the Secret Service, especially during JFK's administration, just because of the fact is a lot of people tend not to look at it as much, but there's a lot there that I feel like needs to be addressed.
Yeah, I appreciate. Well, yeah, like I said, Vince Palamara from Pittsburgh, PA. I'm the author of 6 books. His first one, Survivor's Guilt, Secret Service and the Failure to Protect President Kennedy. Took about 20 years of my life to research and write. It came out in the early 90s in self-published form, but in 2013 it came out via Day, my publisher, in all my books. Second book is JFK from Parkland to Bethesda. This is a medical evidence reference. What this is every single time one of the Parkland doctors, nurses, or people on the Bethesda side said, something to the effect of, where were the wounds and so on, and this catalogs all that. Third book, The Not So Secret Service, basically loose ends from the first book, things that happened since publication and whatnot, and also delves in from FDR to Reagan. Fourth book, Who's Who in the Secret Service, goes from the beginning, literally 1865. Abraham Lincoln, President Lincoln's final act before he went to Ford's Theater was to tell Secretary Hugh McCullough about this new organization called the Secret Service. This goes from that to the present, and it's all the good, the bad, and the ugly Secret Service agents, and there's a lot of Kennedy agents in here. And from 2021, this has done very well, as my first and second books have done very well. This is Honest Answers About the Murder of President Kennedy, a new look at the JFK assassination. This covers the assassination, where the other ones are specialty books on the Secret Service and the medical evidence. This covers the entire case. And I have a 6th book coming out in October, The Plot to Kill President Kennedy in Chicago and the Other Traces of Conspiracy that led to the assassination of JFK, a visual investigation. So I think people are going to be pleased with that one as well. I got into this briefly. I might not look at people and say, oh, I can't believe you're as old as you are. But next month, I'm going to be 58. In 1978, when I was 12 years old, my mom and dad, my mom passed away this past November. I love them dearly.
Sorry to
They
hear that.
got me started. Oh, thanks. They got me started down this path. Again, as a 12-year-old, I was collecting stamps and coins, a lot of foreign stamps and coins. I'd come across pictures of JFK on them. And there's something very charismatic about him to a young boy. I was like, and they just regaled me with stories of his presidency. And you could tell they were big fans of his and they were touched by his death. Well, two things happened at the same time that got me interested in this. The Haas Select Committee, the second major government investigation of the assassination, was going on. So on PBS, they had Dr. Humes and other people giving their testimony. And every night on the news, NBC, ABC, CBS, there was news clips. And it was fascinating me. I was like, Dad, do you think there was a conspiracy? Mom, what's this about this Jack Ruby shooting Oswald? That seems really strange. And then the coup de grace was, it might seem incongruous, but it's not. I To this day, it's my favorite television show. Got them all on DVD. It's a study. It's fictional take on the Secret Service of the 19th century, the Wild Wild West. Now, Secret Service. So you meld Secret Service with my mom and dad's passion for President Kennedy and their sadness over his death, It's all just kind of melded together in the High Select Committee as well. But it wasn't until, and again, I'll keep this very brief, 1988, the 25th anniversary, is when I really began to have a serious interest in this case, other than just reading other people's books and whatnot. And Dr. Weck just passed away on the 13th. He's from Pittsburgh, was from Pittsburgh, and he and Harry Livingstone were instrumental in lighting a fire under me to contact former agents, because Harry Livingstone was doing God's work, like David Lifton with the medical evidence, contacting a lot of medical evidence people from Parkland, Bethesda. Well, Dr. Wecht is just on the Mount Rushmore of researchers, and he was from Pittsburgh. And he suggested, maybe you should contact these former agents. Have you done so? And I was almost embarrassed. I said, no, I haven't, not yet. And he says, you maybe see by doing something like that. And this is before the internet. So I just had directory assistants, luck in newspaper archives, and I found a whole bunch of the agents, and the rest is history. And Harry Livingstone was an inspiration, because what he was doing in the medical evidence is what I wanted to do with the Secret Service. So it leads us up to the present time. Like I said, 6 books, and there's not a day goes by there's not interest from the public on the case. I get inundated with comments and stuff and things like that from my email, Facebook, YouTube, et cetera, et cetera. So
Out of the ones you were able to talk to, how many of them voiced their opinion about the conspiracy to kill Kennedy? I mean, just when it comes to Oswald didn't wasn't the only shooter there.
several of them believe there was a conspiracy. And yeah, one of them was Sam Kinney, the driver of the follow-up car, a mere 5 feet away from Kennedy's car. Again, he was adamant there was a conspiracy. He saw the right rear of Kennedy's head blow off during the assassination. And on the C-130 transport plane heading back, he found the piece of the back of the president's head, put in a phone patch to Dr. Berkeley, and his assistant grabbed it and never knew what happened to it. Abraham Bolden, first African American agent for the Chicago office, he believed there's a conspiracy, still doing well today for the most part. I mean, he's an old man now, but great man. Um, Maurice Martineau, the head of the Chicago office, told me in 1993 he definitely believed there was a conspiracy, but he wouldn't go into any details. But still, it's tremendous. As a
Yeah.
Chicago office agent who was a White House detail agent from FDR to Eisenhower, and he assisted the Kennedy detail whenever they came through Chicago, which was quite a few times between 61 and 63. Believe there was a conspiracy. He was interviewed by the High Select Committee, and part of it was under executive session. Um, Other agents, Robert Bauch, who was the head of the Protective Research Section, investigating threats and whatnot to the presidents. He was in the Secret Service from FDR to LBJ. He also believed there was a conspiracy. A couple other ones would be Paul Landis. We'll get into this in a second. In his initial reports, 2 of them, Secret Service reports submitted to James Riley in the Warren Commission volumes, volume 18, he stated a shot came from the front, very matter of factly. Forrest Sorrells, who rode in the lead car. Now, Paul Landis was in the follow-up car, like Sam Kinney, a few feet away from Kennedy's limousine. Well, in the lead car, Forrest Sorrells was the head of the Dallas office. He also believed the shot came from the front. Not only did his friend Orville Nix say that Forrest Sorrells believed the shot came from the front, Forrest Sorrells is actually in writing, so to speak, because William Manchester's notes when he interviewed him said that he believed the shot came from the overpass area, the terrace, whatnot. So, and another one, Lem Johns, who was an agent for LBJ, was in the vice presidential follow-up car. I believe a shot came from the grassy knoll. And just very briefly, Lem Johns shot down the idea that he was the agent of mysterious repute on the grassy knoll. He said he never went up to the grassy knoll, stayed on the street, hitched a ride in one of the press cars, and there you go. Off the top of my head, that's it. And then there were several agents that gave evidence of conspiracy indirectly through the wounds, like Greer and Kellerman, said the shot in the back didn't go forward. They said the right rear, the head was gone, things like that. So
What about you mentioned the Knoll. It's one of the questions I had for you, but do you know who was in charge of bringing the Secret Service credentials and why there was someone allegedly flashing a badge up there claiming that they were a Secret Service agent?
yeah, that's one of the great mysteries of the case. And in my first book, I explored that in depth. I also explored the supposedly dead Secret Service agent too that all the media was reporting that day. As far as the agent of mysterious repute, it for years people thought it was some sort of CIA boogeyman, or maybe it could have been assassin. My take on it is could have been a real agent. Now all the agents of the motorcade are accounted for. Okay, so the 16 agents in the motorcade cars combined, We know where they are at. We know where the agents are from the Trade Mart, where Kennedy was due to talk. We know the agents at Love Field. But what that leaves open is the Dallas field office, a couple agents we're not 100% sure of, and other field offices, other locations. People travel, Dallas Fort Worth area and just by car and plane, whatnot. So there's a myriad of people that could be. I know that Abraham Bolden thought that Harvey Henderson, his whole boss on the detail that he alleges was let go by President Kennedy over nasty remarks toward Kennedy. Harvey Henderson also had nasty remarks about Abraham Bolden of a racist nature. He said he would have the guts if anybody could have been the grassy knoll agent, it's him. That's a hell of a allegation to say he actually named the name Harvey Henderson. My take on it was I tried to nail down back in 1997. I thought there was an agent who could be Ron Pontius, but now I'm not 100% sure about that. It seems like he shows up at Andrews Air Force Base. So that's a long-winded way of saying my take on it is different from other people. I think it could have been an actual agent flashing a badge and whatnot. And even if it was a fake agent, well, it's very well could be that one of the assassins on the grassy knoll jumped into an open trunk, and within a couple seconds, boom, he's hidden from the public. And these guys were there to offer kind of like a defense of anybody getting too close to things, whatnot. Everything's in good hands. We got a Secret Service agent up here, so it's
Now,
one of the mysteries of the case. Yeah.
with one of the Secret Service agents that was allegedly shot in Dealey Plaza at the time, that kind of goes hand in hand with the pool of blood that was spotted in Dealey Plaza that I think they chalked up to like a red snow cone or something like that. But then later you see that same testimony at Parkland Hospital from Wilma Tice when she talks about a Mr. X coming through and he's bloody and shot. So I start to wonder, have you ever looked into that and wondered if that was the Secret Service agent?
Yes, I have looked at that in depth. That's also my first book, Survivor's Guilt. Yeah, ABC, NBC, CBS, and other the outlets, newspapers, whatnot, matter of factly said a Secret Service agent was shot and killed that day. And there's other augmented reports saying he was shot some distance from the assassination. So it not necessarily had to be in Dealey Plaza. He said some distance from where the assassination occurred. My take on it is there's a chance it was a real agent, but I'm of the belief it could have gave the government federal jurisdiction. And here's the story: because at that time, the murder of a president was not a federal crime; it was a local crime. The murder of a federal agent was a federal crime. So this could have created a temporary cover story. Hey, one of our agents was shot. We're going to get involved in the FBI, CIA, Secret Service, and that's how they were able to take over the body, get on Air Force One, let that story die down if this is true. And it was just enough to like get out there and say, "Wow, a Secret Service agent was shot and killed." Well, that's why the feds are stepping in. That's why they took the body. That's why they went back in, took him to Bethesda and Lord knows what else happened, but it could have just been a ruse for federal jurisdiction. It is a small chance that, I mean, I explored this in my first book, like I said, small chance it was an actual agent, but I'm more towards it was a ruse. It was something to just invoke that. And it came from the Secret Service, I do believe. I believe that they threw that out there, and then later on it was came back that they were mistaken. I think it was Assistant Secretary of the Treasury Robert Wallace came out hours later and said no agent was injured in the attack of the president. Some smart guy on my page said, "Well, was an agent killed?" Okay, no one was injured. Was one killed? So it could be a semantic thing, but I think it's federal jurisdiction. But that's two of the big mysteries of the case. Definitely, the agent of mysterious repute on the knoll and the dead agent, two big Secret Service stories that came out right after the assassination and were inundated on the media about it too. That's what. But like my mom and dad said, Vinny, four people could have killed Kennedy that day, and all the details you're telling us went in one ear and out the other. So when I showed them years later, obviously, when I compiled ABC, NBC, and CBS video footage, black and white footage, and showed them all these things about the Newman saying the shots came from the front, et cetera, et cetera. They're like, wow, they could have said this, but we were so devastated. At the time, we didn't know where Kennedy was or Oswald allegedly was or the shooters. So him being shot from the front, side, rear, up, down, they were just grieving. So again, we were a naive, citizenry at the time, and I think that that's why those details went in one ear and out the other. So It
Well,
led
what
years for people. Yeah.
what about the bullet that Buddy Walters allegedly found? Do you believe that was a Secret Service agent or was some type of undercover agent that picked up? Do you know who Buddy
Yeah. Oh
Walters
yeah.
is? Yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh
I
sure.
see, there's photos of it. Like it's literally back-to-back photos. You see this guy pick up something out of the grass and put it right in
Hmm.
his pocket, and then Buddy
Yeah.
Walters even stare at him. It's been like a point of like, I wouldn't say it's an anomaly in the assassination. I think it plays some importance, but it's one of those things that we really haven't gotten explained. He's voiced and said it was a bullet or shell casing,
It, and
but
his
then
widow, I think, even mentioned about it being a bullet too. I know researcher Mark Oakes has done God's work on this. There's a video of my YouTube channel. It's his video about the mystery FBI man. He alleges it was FBI agent Bob Barrett. Bob Barrett was funny. Him and his fellow agent, I can picture him. The name eludes me now. Gemberling, Robert Gemberling, both came out initially said, "Yeah, that's Bob Barrett." And I guess they realized the ramification of what they were saying. They said, "Oh no, that wasn't me," or Bob Barrett. "Oh no, we're mistaken." But whether it was Barrett or not, the initial impression, Dallas Police Chief Jesse Curry in his book, matter of fact, he said it was an FBI agent picking up a bullet. The Fort Worth Star Telegram, I believe, said it was a bullet. And again, you got Buddy Walters and his widow both saying it was a bullet. It sure looks like he's picking up some. Oh, there's also an AP photograph that was released around the time of the Jim Garrison trial that said, an agent was picking up a bullet. So yeah, definitely. And then you have the Wayne and Edna Hartman alleged that a bullet hit in the ground opposite the grassy knoll, right there in the grass. It made a divot. So you got that too. So yeah.
Well, a lot of stuff, and I think you've mentioned this in the last time you were on, but it's a great point, which is action through inaction. And it's really when you're focusing with the Secret Service, when you really want to talk about them being part of a cover up, a lot of the stuff that looks like a cover up, how much do you really chalk up to them trying to protect their own credibility? I mean, we know Rowley didn't want to fire anybody because of the fact he didn't want to embarrass them and their families, which doesn't make sense. They failed at their duty. But there were also many other things that were going on with the Secret Service, and I don't know how long it was going on for, like the drinking and other factors where they were being very negligent in their actions towards protecting President Kennedy.
Yeah. Well, my when people ask me this, I do not think the Secret Service as an organization was involved in the assassination. I have three suspects, three agents that I suspect went over the line, and that's Floyd Boring, the number two agent of the White House detail, who was the planner of the Texas trip. Even though he wasn't physically present, he gave out assignments and whatnot, and was back and forth with the advance agents on the trip. So very much was an influence, for better or for worse, what happened. Emery Roberts was the shift leader, the agent in the follow-up car in charge of all the other agents. Okay, you got him. We'll go into detail about these in a moment. And then William Greer, who was the driver of the president's limousine. So he had all those three. And then beyond that, I think the other agents were just following orders. They were negligent, this, that, and the other. So I just think I just have three agents who I think crossed the line, and the other ones are just a variation of, again, following orders from Boring, from Roberts, kind of hamstrung by William Greer, slowing down the limousine, looking back twice, disobeying an order from Roy Kellerman to get out of line. We've been hit. I mean, common sense and training. And here's another thing, too. Bill Greer was trained just fine. Some people, again, have looked through modern glasses. Oh, they didn't have the evasive training that modern Secret Service had. Okay, fair enough. But he was trained. He knew to cover and evacuate. He knew to listen to Roy Kellerman. At the very least, if his own common sense and training wasn't kicked in, Roy Kellerman's telling, get out of line. We've been hit. And that's when Roy Kellerman, in a footnote in William Manchester's book, Death of the President, said, Bill Greer then looked in the back of the car. Bill Greer looked in the back of the car. Maybe he didn't believe me. And so even Roy Kellerman realized that he looked back. But for years, people thought Greer just looked back one time. And in 1991, my first conference presentation, I was showing people, no, he actually looked back two times. The sequence is crucial. First shot or shots rings out. Bill Greer looks back once. He's seeing the Connollys, he's seeing Kennedy. He's looking right at Kennedy. He claimed he couldn't see him. In the Zapruder film, you can see he's looking directly at him, as are the Connollys, as is Roy Kellerman. Roy Kellerman turns back around, grabs the radio microphone, says, we've been hit. Get us to the hospital. So Bill Greer's hearing that, and he disobeys a direct, excuse me, he just disobeys a direct order. Common sense training is looking back again at Kennedy until the fatal shot makes its mark. Only then does he face forward, hit the gas. He denied us. The Warren Commission says, oh, no, I accelerated after what was probably the second shot. Denied seeing Kennedy, and the Warren Commission just bought it hook, line, and sinker. I mean, they had a copy of the Zapruder film. They could have saw it for their own eyes, but this is before Woodward and Bernstein, back when we took the government as the blood oath of God, whatever they said is good, and that got just thrown under the rug. And then when you factor in about Bill Greer that it took years to find this out, little old me. Even though Bill Greer died in 1985, his son Richard's still around. And when I spoke to him, Richard, in 1990, 91, I asked him what his father thought of Kennedy. And the first time around, he didn't say anything. And the second time, he said, "Well, we're Methodists, and JFK was Catholic." Was a jaw dropping, I don't know what to say moment. And then it turns out that Bill Greer, only came out in 2013, working with the Irish Times overseas in conjunction with myself. They found out that Bill Greer was part of the Orange Order, the Order of the Orange. And as we know, for generations, there's been this bloody wars between Protestants and Catholics and whatnot. So again, it's a religious thing. You would think that his son, to a total stranger on the phone, would said, "Oh, my dad loved President Kennedy. President Kennedy loved him." But he said nothing the first time I asked. And the second time he went and said, "Well, we're Methodists and JFK was Catholic." And then before you can, digest all that, again, this only came out in the late 90s, little amateur me in the woods. Again, because no one else was going down this road, the Secret Service, I got a pretty rare manuscript, although researchers know about it now. It's called A Million Miles of Presidents, written by head of the White House Signal Corps, George McNally, who was also a former Secret Service agent. It was released by his widow in 1982, just a Kinko's FedEx copy deal. Okay, it was never actually published per se, but Last Trial Bookshop had a copy. Okay, George McNally died in 1970. His widow came out in this 1982. Here's the point. In the book, it's unindexed, but it's going point by point, line by line about all President Kennedy's trips. And keep in mind, George McNally was also on trips for Truman and Eisenhower as well. Out of nowhere, he says, Thomas Shipman, one of President Kennedy's drivers, died suddenly. I'm like, what?
A month
I never even
before.
heard of this guy. Yeah. And make a long story short, it took years to find this out, but Thomas B. Shipman died October 14th, 1963 at Camp David. He's the only person that died at Camp David. He's the only Secret Service agent of the Kennedy era to die. There's only been roughly 38 agents. So from 1865 to the present, 2024, thousands of men and women have served. Countless men and women have served in Secret Service. Only roughly 38 have died in line of duty. One of them's Thomas Shipman. Some your people might be saying, "Okay, tell me more about Thomas Shipman." Thomas Shipman was one of the drivers of President Kennedy. He drove the limousine. There's photos. I have photos and films of him driving the limousine for Kennedy. Also, the follow-up car as well. It turns out when I spoke to his family, and again, I always do something that a good defense attorney never tells you never to do. Don't ask a question you don't know the answer to. I can't tell you how many times I've gone in blind, and witnesses could have just, threw a wet blanket on my research. Like when I contacted all these Secret Service agents, they could have shot down my theories and ideas, and they didn't. Well, when I talked to the Shipman family, surviving daughter and whatnot, and they told me that, oh no, Tom or my dad or my uncle, whatnot, oh, he was really looking forward to the Dallas trip because we have relatives in Dallas. So he was really looking forward to it. They said, oh, if he was the driver, he would have functioned a lot better than Bill Greer's ineptness and whatnot. Well, it turns out he died October 63. He was buried 2 days later. 2 days later, no toxicology reports, no nothing. A country doctor saying there was a heart attack. Well, he just passed his annual physical. The family was mystified. He was fit as a fiddle, and you had to be extra fit as a fiddle to drive a president because one false move to you, the chief executive is going to die in an accident potentially or get seriously hurt. So all the agents had annual physicals, but the drivers especially had to be fit and fiddle. Well, they were mystified. His family said that he just passed the annual physical. They think there's something to his death. They think there's something to him being here 2 days later. Point well taken, they said about me saying there was no toxicology test because this could take weeks, if not months, to come out. So they didn't check his blood for drugs, whatnot. He dies in his sleep at Camp David. Give me a break. And here's the thing that's really crazy is no matter what people thought of President Kennedy, he's very popular to this day. He was a very kind and considerate person. He mentioned nothing about Shipman's death. Pierre Salinger and his assistant said nothing about his death, and yet 10 years later, when Cliff Dietrich, one of Nixon's agents, died when his helicopter crashed, Pat Nixon and Jolie went to the funeral. President Nixon himself, it was newspaper articles, it was a press conference talking about how saddened he was by the death of Cliff Dietrich. Well, here was a prominent agent died at Camp David. No one knew about till the late 90s, till little old me told people about it in my books later on. And it's just mystifying. And the only articles that are out there are local Maryland newspaper articles that I had to pay a fee from newspapers.com. It's not like, oh, there was in the Washington Post, Vince, and the New York Times. So even the major newspaper, the dailies and whatnot, didn't even report on it. And again, nothing from the White House. It just defies logic. But here's the bottom line in all this. Well, it gave an opportunity for Greer to drive Kennedy instead. So it's grist for the mill. People always talk about this mysterious deaths of people after the fact. Here's a mysterious death before the fact. And you have his family not raiding on my parade. They didn't seek any money or fame. They're back to being obscure in the Colorado area and whatnot. They didn't want any publicity, nothing. They were just telling me, again, stranger on the phone. Oh, yeah, we always thought it was weird. Dr. Berkeley said he'd take care of everything. 2 days later, he's buried. They thought it was weird. He thought it was strange. Oh, yeah, if he would have drove President Kennedy, I think that Kennedy would have lived. And just unbelievable, because they could have said something else. They could have just blew my mind and said something else and said, oh, no, Vince, you're barking on the wrong tree. He had a heart condition. Oh, there's nothing to this. But no, they went the other way and just made it even more grist for the mill. So
Now,
again, when you have those agents, good.
no, I was going to ask about with Thomas Shipman, do you think it would have been different if Thomas Shipman was driving Kennedy instead of William Greer?
I do. Because again, when you factor in Greer not being a fan of Catholics, and we know JFK was the first Catholic president, he wore it on his sleeve, not me. And to bring up people's religion backgrounds, they offered it out when I said, telling his son, what did your father think of Kennedy? He said nothing. Very embarrassing, awkward. It'd be like if you were asking me a question, I just sat here, I guess you'd be like, Vince, are you okay? Is your mic okay? Well, he didn't say anything. And I went back to it later on and said, Mr. Greer, being Richard, I said, what did your father think of President Kennedy? And that's when he said it like that. Well, we're Methodists. JFK was Catholic. So you put in what he did do at Elm Street. Even Gerald Posner and Vince Bugliosi, to their credit, even said Greer was the success of the assassination. Now, they believe Oswald acted alone, but even if you believe Oswald acted alone, Greer looked back not once but twice. He disobeyed a direct order. He denied all this later. He slows down the car. People even said, I've like in my fifth book, this book, I have 72 witnesses said the car either slowed or stopped. Even if it just slowed, it gave all the opportunity in the world for an assassin or an assassins to complete their work. And that night, the autopsy, Bill Greer begins his hijinks. He tells the agents, the FBI agents, there was times the president asked me to slow down. So in other words, oh, blame
What?
the victim. Oh, little, shot over the bow, so he could just lay the foundation that maybe the president ordered him to slow down, just like maybe the president ordered the agents off the car. Maybe the president ordered the bubble top off. Maybe the president ordered the motorcycles away. The president wanted the trademark. Darn it, he didn't want those other speech sites. See, President Kennedy's dead, can't defend himself. And again, the Secret Service were the good guys for generations. People just put him on a pedestal. Well, people don't put the FBI on the pedestal, especially J. Edgar Hoover, especially the CIA. They're the boogeymen of the case, and justifiably so. But for years, people go, oh, the valor of Clint Hill. He got a medal for trying to protect President Kennedy. Meantime, he was one of the 9 agents that drank the night before. That's another story in
He was
itself.
out till like 4:30 in the morning, if I'm not mistaken, set his alarm for 6:30 to get him woken up with a breakfast that got delivered to his room.
Yeah, they were report for duty at 8 a.m. Paul Landis didn't leave the cellar until 5:30 a.m. They drank at the Fort Worth Press Club and the cellar. Some people try to say, "Oh, they just served fruit juice at the cellar. There's nothing to it." Well, they drank at the Fort Worth Press Club, and those were pickups or whatnot. They would serve fruit juice, but under the table would be the alcohol
Yeah.
with it. That was just the chaser. So there you go. But yeah, 4 agents on the fall car admitted to drinking the night before, which is grounds for removal from the Secret Service. These men were not punished in any way. James Riley, Chief Justice Earl Warren was very angry, to his credit. If you read the testimony of James Riley in Volume 5, the Warren Commission volumes, oh, he took James Riley to task, took him to the woodshed. So, if these men weren't up late, not getting sleep, and in a beatnik club drinking, maybe the president would have lived. Why didn't you punish these men? Says, I didn't think that I wanted to scar their families. In today's world, These guys would be facing jail time, loss of pension, loss of reputation. They'd be vilified, crucified, death threats. They'd have to go into hiding. But back then, it was all swept under the rug, baby. It was all just, people believed everything their government said. This before Watergate, Woodward, and Bernstein. You didn't have the internet. All you had was naive people like, Beaver Cleaver and Donna Reed show, and everybody would just believe everything the government said, and everybody's all consumed with the Vietnam War after it, and they're just believing, hey, the Warren report saying Oswald did it. Okay, these men were not punished in any way whatsoever. And he said, look at Clint Hill, what he did. Meantime, Clint Hill was late to the car. The assassination was all over and done by the time he gets on the back of the car. He was there to protect Jackie, not JFK. And to add insult to injury, it is what it is. Brutal photo analogies and film analysis, I should say, shows that Clint Hill never touched Jacqueline. Jacqueline got in and out of the car of her own volition. Yeah, he covered her when everything was over and done with. And even Clint Hill, for years, said, I should have been there. I should have been in the back of the car. It's my fault. But then all of a sudden, later on in life, he kind of changed his tune and joined the JFK is to blame for us not being there crowd, because they realized little old me out in the wilderness. This is before my first book was published. It was a self-published affair, but I was all over the internet back, in the late 90s, early millennium. And Gerald Blaine even admitted he saw my work. He knew, but I spoke to him a couple of times, and I sent a 22-page letter to Clint Hill in 2005. He was livid over it. I got his address. His address was unpublished at the time. I got it through a fellow agent, Lynn Meredith, and he shocked me. He goes, now this is unpublished. I'm going to give you Clint Hill's unpublished address and telephone number. Please do not bug him. I trust you because you're sound like you're a history student. I'm very flattered you're so into my agency. Maybe he will be able to answer your questions. Well, I sent Clint Hill a 22-page cliff notes of all my work, which isn't very flattering to the Secret Service. Did you realize a lot of your colleagues said President Kennedy never ordered you guys off the back of the car? Why weren't you there? Why weren't the other agents there? And on and on and on. He was very angry. Point being is, out of nowhere, the trade papers started to talk about Gerald Blaine is writing a book called The Kennedy Detail, originally scheduled for release like 2008. It came out in 2010. First-time author. Nobody knew who Gerald Blaine was. This obscure agent got on Simon & Schuster, which is the #1 publishing company in the world. Huge media blitz on all the networks. He got a Discovery television documentary. For a while, he had a Hollywood movie in the works, got scrapped. Thanks to little old me, I contacted the director and I told him all the details of what they're leaving out, because I got a galley of some of the script, and the movie went away. And that's when Gerald Blaine and his friends started harassing me and working online. It's a convoluted way of saying that Clint Hill and Gerald Blaine turned out they were friends for 50 years, fly fishing in Colorado, well retired, never going to write a book. Clint Hill, for years, a badge of honor, said, oh, I'd never write a book. They saw my work. They both talked about me out of nowhere on C-SPAN, 2010, 2012. Little old unpublished me, this kid from Pittsburgh, and the CEO of C-SPAN, Brian Lamb, saying, this gentleman, Vince Palamara, graduate Duquesne University, Pittsburgh. Do you know him? I know of him, yes. And they were derogatory about me. He showed a YouTube video of me talking about the Kennedy Detail book, and they came out and they had the knives for me. 2 years later, Clint Hill was on there again. This fellow, Vince Palamara, he actually had something nice to say about your first book. Are you aware about it, Mrs. Kennedy and me? But a lot of people said, wow, Vince, why are they talking about little old you? During the interview, everything else was about Jacqueline Kennedy, her trips abroad, real, G-rated stories. And out of nowhere, they talk about you. Why, indeed? Because, again, it's little old me. 2005, I sent that letter to Clint Hill. Gerald Blaine, this is the real smoking gun evidence of something going on here. Because somebody could say, oh, Vince, that's all a coincidence. They just came out in 2005. You just happened to contact them. Come on. Well, Gerald Blaine was quoting my private letter to Clint Hill when I spoke to Gerald Blaine the next day, not telling him I wrote to Clint Hill or nothing, mind you. I spoke to him in 2004 and 2005, and Gerald Blaine said, hey, you're a little too hard on Emory Roberts. I said, what do you mean, sir? He quoted verbatim what I said to Clint Hill, something he had a fax machine or he sent it through email or whatnot, but my God. And then that's, again, out of nowhere. And then anybody who reads the Kennedy Detail, I'm on 2 pages. I'm not named, I guess, for legal reasons. If he's afraid I was going to sue him or whatnot. He's a self-described Secret Service expert. But all through the book, he's blaming Kennedy. He basically makes it sound like Oswald acted alone, and Oswald would not have been successful. The agents would have been in the back of the car, but President Kennedy didn't want them there, which is against what Gerald Blaine told me in 2004. He joined the course and said, "Oh, President Kennedy was a very nice man, never interfered with our actions at all, never ordered us off the back of the car." They were all telling me this. In fact, back in 1992, I spoke to the head of the White House detail, Gerald Bain. September 27, 1992 was a day we'll live in infamy, Robbie, because that could have been the day my research could have went vroom, down the tubes. Because up to 1992, I begrudgingly believed some of the stories about Kennedy. Didn't want the top, he didn't want the agents on the car, he didn't want the motorcycles, etc. So again, the number one agent of Kennedy's detail, Gerald Bain, as opposed to Blaine, Behn. He was there from FDR to LBJ. He was the head of the detail. And I said to him, "Yeah, I understand from my reading. I've read the Warren Report, Bishop's Kennedy, day Kennedy was shot at William Manchester, death of the president. President Kennedy ordered the agents off the car." And he cut me off and goes, "I don't remember Kennedy ever saying anything about not having agents on the back of the car. If you look at the newsreels, you'll see agents on there from time to time." I became caught mouthed. I could barely recover from that. I'm like, oh my God. And I taped it too. He allowed me to tape him. He was one of several agents. Thank God that I have him on tape, because, somebody could always say, "Oh, Vince, you're mistaken. Maybe you heard him wrong." It's there, crystal clear as can be. I don't remember Kennedy ever saying anything about not having agents on the back of the car. Well, after I recovered from my shock, I'm always a defense attorney, imaginary. And I said, "Vince, some of the actors could say it's one guy, even though it was a very important guy. Could he have been senile?" He wasn't senile. He was very lucid. But somebody could say, "It's just one guy." Well, that's when I started to contact all his associates. This is before they can compare notes, before the internet really kicked in. There was message bulletin boards for all purposes. 92 to 93, 92 to 94 was pretty much in its infancy. Many people I knew didn't even have the internet or even heard of it. But the bottom line is they didn't get a chance to compare notes, and they're living in Maryland, Florida, Michigan, whatnot. And I'm calling all these gentlemen, and they're all telling me the same thing. "Oh, President Kennedy, that's baloney. Where'd you read that one from?" "Oh, he never wore us off the back of a car. In fact, I can tell you on this trip, Bob Lilly told me, oh, President Kennedy, he always used to say, whatever you guys want is the way it will be." He was very cooperative. In fact, on a trip to Puerto Rico, Roy Kellerman and I were on the back of a car at speeds of 50 miles an hour, and that top was on. There was no rain. So I don't know where these myths come from. I'm just like, Robbie, I'm like in shock here. And please pinch me. I'm dreaming, because there could have been no book. If these guys, even if they've been lying to me, if they would have told the official story, there'd be no books. There'd be no nothing. This probably maybe would have been like a paper. "Hey, I contacted these guys. This is neat," even though they're all confirming official history, but they were telling me the exact opposite. So zoom up to 2005, Gerald Blaine, he even admitted in his book and in articles, he was reading the internet and he was aghast at these stories, blaming my brothers for what happened and didn't happen in Dallas. That's when he wrote the Kennedy detail. That's when I got a letter from his attorney threatening me to take down my blog. That's when I got harassed not once but twice at work. I had the head of HR, scary call, head of HR. Once you go to a private conference room, I'm like, "Is anybody else here?" I'm like, "No, I'm getting fired for something. What did I do?" We have a gentleman, for legal reasons, I'm not going to name him, but he's associate, very good friend, former military intelligence, former postman too, friend of Gerald Blaine, says, "Yeah, we got a really nasty letter urging our CEO to terminate your employment for your unpatriotic writings about a former Secret Service agent." Before I could say anything, she started out as, "Vince, rest assured, you're not losing your job. Everything's fine. It's First Amendment. You didn't say or do anything wrong. In fact, if he writes again," he did write again. He wrote twice. I got called in twice. The second time, I had a feeling I knew what this was about. She said, "We're going to tell him we're going to get an injunction where he's going to get in big trouble if he harasses you again." Luckily, the CEO, we screened all his mails. The CEO never saw it. Evidently, he was a personal friend and he knew the CEO trying to get me fired. So there's nothing to this, people. "Oh, Oswald alone, get a life." Here's little old me writing, about the Secret Service failures. And here's a former agent sending his lawyer after me to take down my blog. I didn't. I just called his bluff and I didn't take it down. And the second thing was getting harassed at work. Also harassed online too. Amazon reviews were deleted. My blogs were temporarily gone. My YouTube channel. There was one day in late 2013 where everything disappeared. I'm like, what the heck? I contacted Google, and they said, yeah, it was basically, it looks like it was spam. There was a lot of complaints, and so they brought it all back. It took a while. It took a couple of weeks to bring everything back. And again, this happened a little postscript a couple of years ago when Carol Leonig wrote a number one best-selling book about the Secret Service, and she's a friendly person because she criticizes the Secret Service, but she quotes me in there in one page of the book and whatnot. All my books on Amazon disappeared right before her book came out. It took a couple days for the representatives of Amazon to bring them back. They didn't know what happens is maybe it was a hack or whatnot. I'm so sorry, sir. Yeah, what happened? But when they came back, her book was already out there released. And I think someone, some party did that because they realized, oh, Vince's books will sell now because her book's the number one seller. So people will search and say, oh, it's a similar book and that. And I think they took my books underground for a couple of days. Then they were safely back up when her book was already out there in the media.
Yeah, but they do that with your YouTube too. If I'm not mistaken, you've had some issues with your YouTube channel being taken down. You had to fight to get put back up because you have very important footage on there. One that I'll get to you later because I don't want to distract from what we're on right now. But it's very easy to slander someone when they're dead and take all the blame off of yourself, like the Secret Service has done, and put it onto Kennedy because he can't defend himself. But it's a very quick Google search that any person can do to look up that the Secret Service has overall authority when it comes to the president's safety. They can say
That's the other
yes
major
to the
discovery.
president, but it's a factor of the Secret Service depict and be able to do whatever they wish when it comes to the president's safety. So Kennedy ordering them off the limousine. I think there's even footage. You see one of the agents throw his hands up like, what? It wasn't Kennedy that made that order. It was another person on the
Yeah, it
car.
was Emery Roberts, one of my suspects, the shift leader. I discovered this footage in 1991, shocked as I could be. I got a whole bunch of 1983. I'm going to make this very short. 1983, the Dallas Fort Worth area re-aired. It's WFAA, the ABC affiliate, aired hours and hours and hours of their video that they'd not aired in 20 years at that time. Well, a collector up in Canada got bootlegs of them. I purchased them for a couple $100s in 1991. I'm watching the video. I'm going, what is this? There's some agent who raised his hand not once, not twice, but three times like this. He looked like he was running with the car at Love Field. Another agent goes like this, and you obviously can't hear because it's far away. It's being narrated by people from WFAA. What gives? Turns out not one, it took years for this to come out, not one but two agents were recalled at Love Field. For a while, I thought the agent was Henry Ribka. Another time I thought it was Don Lawton. It actually was both of them. And that the confusion is only in newsreel footage. And again, it's in my books and it's online, it's on video. You could see Henry Ribka, an agent, walking behind Don Lawton. Henry Ribka's relieved for whatever reason. And then when the WFAA video feed from ABC begins, then you only see Don Lawton, and he's the more famous of the two agents who's recalled. But the bottom line, two agents were recalled, and Ribka's report even talks about jogging with the limousine. Bottom line is it was Emery Roberts who did that. Don Lawton passed away in 2014, but he was really good friends with a woman who was in, believe it or not, military intelligence. She came out in an article in the Idaho area right after Don Lawton, a tribute to Don Lawton, and she said that Don Lawton told her, "I should have been there. I should have been there in the back of the car. I rode on the back of the car in Tampa and in Chicago earlier in that year. I should have been there." When I spoke to Don Lawton, tragically, I did not know in 1995 he was the agent in the footage. That's another story. I didn't know at the time he was the agent, but we're having a conversation, and he said something very interesting though. He said, well, you're always going to have regrets, remorse. Who knows if they only would have left guys in the back of the car? They, Secret Service. He didn't say anything about Kennedy, ordered him off the car. Turns out he was the agent. I didn't know at the time, but still, I got him on audio saying the same thing. And it's crazy. He says, you always have regrets, remorse. Who knows if only they would have left agents in the back of the car? Pretty interesting. And then you couple that with what this woman is espousing that I should have been there. I should have been on the back of the car. You go the Tampa trip, 28 miles long, Robbie. It was his longest JFK's longest domestic motorcade ever. Only the one, it's a foreign trip to Germany was longer. Both trips, Germany and Tampa, had agents on the back of the car, and often at fast speeds. They had other tremendous security measures
On
invoked as well.
rooftops.
Yep. Don Lawton was on the back of the car. Yeah, as far as security, you had building rooftops being guarded by police and helicopters. You had fast speed of the car, agents on the back of the limousine. You had the press photographers, flatbed trucks filming, and oftentimes live television feeds in front of the car. You had many motorcycles surrounding the car in a diamond formation. You had the bubble top either partial or full at certain times on these trips. You had again, building rooftops. That was another major discovery. I'd say just real quick synopsis. Agents were never ordered off the car. Major discovery of mine through interviewing these former agents. And when I found the films and photos and videos and whatnot of these trips, it took years to find. I go, my God, look at how many trips are agents are on the back of the car. That's that. The Secret Service was the boss, the president, not the other way around. For years, most people would probably think that's just a lowly agent, a gopher. Come on, Vance, it's the leader of the free world. He's in charge. No, Clint Hill, of all people, even came out in 2010 and said, talking about President Kennedy, he says, well, he can tell you what he wants done. That doesn't mean you have to do it. What we always used to do was agree with the president, and we did what we felt was best anyway. When I got that video from the Sixth Floor Museum, I almost fell over and I played it over and over again. I said, I can't believe he's saying this, and Gerald Blaine's right next to him. I think he said that for history because it's not in his books. It's not in Gerald Blaine or his books. I think he did that because an eye towards history, moment of conscience and whatnot, but he's very well corroborated. Huey Bauman, JFK's first Secret Service chief, in a book written before the assassination, says Secret Service's boss. An AP article, Associated Press article that went all over the world, all over the United States, said the Secret Service can overrule even the president when it comes to security. And again, there's much corroboration for that. Presidents Truman, Johnson, and Clinton, all three of those presidents are on record saying Secret Service was the only boss the President of the United States had. Okay, that's the other one. The third major discovery was building rooftops regarded during the Kennedy administration. In fact, they were guarded from FDR, Truman, Eisenhower, and Kennedy, not just as a reaction to the assassination. There's two major books that were written before the assassination, one with the help of Chief Inspector of the Secret Service, Michael Trina, who wrote the Secret Service Manual. Says, matter of factly, whenever a president's in a parade, agents or police man building rooftops. Took hundreds of dollars, but newspaper.com, they're in my new book and they're in my previous books here and there. Newspaper articles saying president visit Nashville, when he visit Paris, when he visit Pittsburgh. In some cases, you can actually see the police, but this says that the police will guard the building rooftops. We went to Milwaukee. The police chief says, yeah, we're going to guard all building rooftops until the president and his party pass. But again, if you read official history, and those newspaper articles didn't cost you a couple $100 to get out years later, you're thinking, oh, Vince, get a life. That's only because he was assassinated they started doing that. No, not true at all. In fact, the coup de grace was something very recent, 2020, during the height of COVID. A fellow YouTuber, I call him, he had a YouTube channel, really nice one. He had all this original video of maybe CNBC, CBS. It was taken down later. Thank God they call it ripping, taking the video off his channel. There was a clip from ABC Nation, like based in New York, ABC. Ron Gardner's telling millions of people that he was very alarmed that this happened, this assassination, because building rooftops are guarded by the Secret Service or police. And this has been going on for many years. Whenever the president's in a parade, he's going on and on about, like, I cannot believe what I'm seeing. And again, that made my YouTube channel many times. It's now in my books and whatnot. But again, 2020. And the overriding point I made about 5 minutes ago, I said I'd get back to, is a lot of films and photos have only seen the light of day in the last 5 to 15 years due to photographers dying. Copyright laws are more loose now, thanks to Pinterest. Everybody's sharing millions of copyrighted photos and whatnot. YouTube doesn't take things down like they used to. Used to be, oh, this is copyrighted by Major League Baseball or American Idol and whatnot. Now they leave most of that stuff up. Well, making a long story short, the Whitehouse photographers, Cecil Stoughton and Robert Knudsen, both died. So all their material became public domain like 2008 on the JFK library. And that's when I found these trips. Like, oh my, look at the press in front of the president on this trip in Hawaii, and there's agents around the car, and on and on and on. But again, for years, this stuff wasn't available. So we only had the inaugural parade in Dallas and very little in between. It's only the last 5 to 15 years people are sharing stuff online, beautifully digitized photos and films and whatnot, even video. We have, what really cracks me up, Ravi, is there's a video saying Secret Service stand on debunked. And somebody posted President Kennedy's trip to San Diego, and they're claiming that this debunks that there's no truth to President Kennedy having extra security. Meantime, I guess they're only looking at the back of the car because Marines are lining the street facing the crowd, 5 at a time. Okay, that's the first one. Even the narrator's saying, wow, look at the Marines guarding the crowd. They're facing the crowd 5 at a time, all on the side of the road, both sides of the road. Okay, it's the first part. Then you'll see, oh my God, it's a live television feed. They're right in front of the limousine. Oh, wow, the special agent in charge, Gerald Baines, riding in the limousine, not Roy Kellerman, a third stringer. And then again, because people don't realize building rooftops were normally guarded, that's why they didn't look like a police state all the time. Agents weren't always in the back of the car, but they had a combination of factors. They had the building rooftops guarded, they had the police and or military and or agents sometimes lining the streets facing the crowd. You had that kind of protection on street level and in buildings that neutralized and protected a lot in and of itself. And then when the agents thought that there was a danger, they would ride on or near the back of the car. So they weren't always there So it's not like a gotcha, like, hey, Vince, I found a trip. They weren't in the back of the car. Well, no, because they had other security. And again, a lot of this only came out years later because it used to be years ago. I didn't have a good answer for people. Like back in, I don't know, 2010, 2012, I'd be like, darn, you found a trip where agents on the back of the car. I'll have to investigate this. I'm not sure. But then I found a whole bunch of other trips they were on the car. So I said, maybe it was the judgment issue. They should have been on the back of the car in Dallas. Well, then I found out, oh my God, well, building rooftops were guarded and they were lying in the streets facing the crowd. They were in the crowd. In fact, there's an article from the summer of '63 talking about the Germany trip, and says, will not be readily apparent to the crowd are the thousands of plainclothes police in the crowds themselves as President Kennedy's motorcade passes. So you had all those factors. You wouldn't have needed Abraham Zapruder or some amateur in Dallas. They would have been right there in front of the car, number one. You would have many more motorcycles, many more professional eye-near witnesses, law enforcement with guns. Thank you very much. You would have had a military aide normally rode in the front seat. He was told for the first time, Godfrey from McHugh said he was told for the first time not to ride in the limousine. That was by order of the Secret Service to accentuate full exposure. The doctor protested, Dr. Berkeley. He wanted to be close to the limousine. He said only one other trip in Kennedy's 3 years was he not close to the car, and that was Rome. But again, oh, Rome, huh? Oh, look at Rome. Oh, there's agents in the back of the car, including Gerald Blaine. He's in the back of cars, many motorcycles bracketed in cars, building rooftops guard. You can see a helicopter. The list goes on. So it's a combination of all these factors. But again, it took little old me out in the wilderness. It took the digitization and the release of a lot of films and photos the last 5 to 15 years. It took me contacting these men to find these things out, and he passed away. Thank God I contacted them. Thank God a lot of times I got them on audio or I got them in writing, because they would have slipped this mortal coil. We would never knew what this agent said. This agent said, and do you realize what would have happened? Well, probably never would have wrote anything. So Gerald Blaine, Clint Hill never would have came out with their books. But let's say they came out with their books, there'd be no counter to it. So everyone would believe it. Hey, Clint Hill's saying this. I believe Clint Hill. Who are you? Clint Hill is saying this. This is good as gold to me. So thank God there's another record of people a lot higher than Clint Hill. Art Godfrey was one of the shift leaders, a lot higher than Clint Hill. Told me it was baloney. Oh, President Kennedy never wore us off the car. What are you talking about? List goes on, Robbie. So
Can I ask what the reactions were when they made it to Parkland hospitals? And before we get to where they ended up brandishing guns, but more about the cleaning of the limousine. Do you believe they cleaned out the limousine? Because they're, from what I can tell, I mean, it might be just be Dallas police and maybe some nurses that did it as well too, but there were pieces of brain and bullet fragments that were put into a bucket, and that bucket was never submitted into evidence. So there's a huge problem right there. But what was the Secret Service? I mean, were they aware of? Because I've seen varying statements. One person said, "No way, we would never be so stupid to clean out the limousine." And then I've seen people say, "Yeah." And I'm pretty sure I noticed makeup on the top of Kennedy's head too, like something that looked like it was covering up a wound or something.
yeah, that was one of the Dallas police officers who was interviewed by was it Larry Sneed for No More Silence, his book where he interviewed a whole bunch of people. It
Yeah.
might have been Dale, the one his last name's Dale, one of the motorcycle outriders. But to your point, yeah, there's actual black and white films and still photos. You could see Agent Sam Kinney with a bucket, George Hickey, who's infamous for other reasons. They're the two specific agents that are putting up the bubble top to screen people from seeing what's inside. They're putting the fabric cover on top. They have the doors open and they're there with a bucket. Now, some people have claimed, and could be some of this, that bucket, Vince, that was for the screws and fasteners of the bubble top. And Sam Kinney was carrying it around, the possibility. But the bottom line is there's definitely conflicting stories. There's witnesses said it was cleaned out. In fact, it's in my first book. I have a list of all the people that said it. And so you got people from Parkland, nurses, whatnot, that reported it was scrubbed out. And there's other ones that said it wasn't. And there's some that said it was contemplated. But the bottom line is it was screened from the public, whatever was going on. And you get blood spatter experts like the late Sherry Feaster has said that blood spatter would have showed in and of itself where the shot came from. You got skull fragments, you got bullet fragments, you got the claims of Dr. Young, James Young, who claimed that he found a piece of the president's skull in the back seat. You have Sam Kinney, who said he found a piece of the president's skull in the back seat. Now you got Paul Landis last year coming out with his book as an 88-year-old man. He's claiming that he found the bullet, which he claims is the magic bullet, on the back seat of the car. One thing about Paul Landis is amazing. I might have said earlier, he doesn't mention in his book, anywhere in his book, that he wrote two reports saying the shot came from the front. That is an omission, a conscious omission, and that is bad journalism. That was consciously, he did that. You have a major book You're only talking about the assassination a little bit for that book. Most of it's just like boring about his upbringing. People only wanted that book because they want to know about Dallas. He's claiming he found the book. Yeah. Let's get to the meat and potatoes. What's he say about Dallas here? And it's a very small part of the book. He doesn't mention, oh, people, I wrote 2 Secret Service reports saying a shot came from the front. Doesn't mention that at all. I just think it's a grievous thing. And the fact that he never mentioned it before. He was interviewed several times in 1988 during the 25th anniversary, never mentioned the bullet. He was interviewed by Gerald Blaine. He's even on the documentary, the Kennedy details shown Discovery Channel, never mentions about the bullet. But then all these years later, oh, by the way, I found a bullet. This is one time I agree with Clint Hill. It's not credible. It is incredible. Some people try to latch on and go, oh, Vince, this destroys the magic bullet. What are you doing? Well, we got to be factual here. We can't ignore the record. We can't just say, just because it's convenient for us now in 2023 and 2024, that Paul Landis is saying the single bullet theory, which I'll give him credit for one thing. He is on record earlier saying he didn't believe the single bullet theory. He just wouldn't go into any details. Him and Clint Hill both did not believe the single bullet theory. But to admit from your book that you wrote 2 Secret Service reports to Chief Riley during the Warren Commission, Volume 18, shot came to the front, that to me is just ridiculous. So that's what we're fighting here. We're fighting, the John Q. Citizen out there doesn't have time to research this. They rely on us. They rely on films, documentaries, and whatnot. And when things are omitted, the public's never going to know. And that's the sad. I wish I could have got a chance. I didn't get a chance to make that Duquesne University conference with Dr. Wecht and Paul Lance there. I would have loved to have been an audience member and say, sir, why didn't you mention about your 2 reports? And it just amazing. I read the Amazon reviews, and so far I haven't seen anybody else pick up on that. That's ridiculous. That's an omission. Just totally destroys his book in a lot of respects.
What
Destroys your credibility. So
what about the chain of custody when it comes to the limousine when it got sent over to Ford Motor Company? I mean, who was responsible for taking it there, and then what exactly happened when it was broken down and cleaned up and put right back on?
yeah, I know. Well, speaking of Sam Kinney and George Hickey, they were responsible for the presidential limousine, the fob car, heading back to Love Field. And they were on the C-130 transport plane, and that's when Sam Kinney told me, "Oh, I found the back of the head, the skull particle in the back seat." And I contacted the C-130 crew. These men were unknown until Sam Kinney gave me the manifest, the flight manifest. I'm like, "Oh my God, these names!" I find all the other ones wouldn't talk to me. Only Vincent Gullo, I think he was the actual pilot. He corresponded back to me, and he confirmed everything Sam told you is the truth. But I don't want to go into any more details about this until I find the thrust of why you're contacting me. I've only spoke about this one time to federal agents. I'm like, oh wow. So not only is this guy no one ever knew about, he was talked to by federal agents, so we didn't know about that. I wrote him a follow-up letter. He never got back to me. The point being, his first letter corroborates Sam about the back of the headpiece being in the back of the limousine. That's amazing. He could have came back and said, "There's no truth to that. Sam's telling you a lie," but he's saying, "No, it's true." Yeah. And so, but the bottom line, okay, to answer your question directly, now the C-130 went back to Washington D.C. while the casket's going on to Bethesda, Maryland, supposedly. The limousine heads back to the White House garage. You had members of the Washington field office there. One of them, Dick Kaiser, ended up being special agent charged during the Nixon, Ford, and Carter eras, but he was there as a lowly Washington field office agent. Several of them were guarding the limousine. And that's when Charles Taylor noted a bullet hole, an actual hole. It's in his report, in the limousine itself, which seems to indicate a shot from the front because the official story is it was only cracked, no hole. There's a couple other witnesses. Joe Palella, who was a White House detail agent, also said there was a hole there as well. And as we know, there was Dallas police motorcycle outriders who were Parkland. Who knows the hole? You could put a pencil through it.
Pencil through, yeah.
Nurse Avelia Glangis, who also wrote me a letter. She was on the medical Kennedy. Matter of fact, he talks about a hole. Okay, so it was there. The FBI came and they took photographs of it, color photos of the gory back seat. So you can see, you can make an argument some stuff was cleaned up and some stuff wasn't because there was still blood and flour particles, whatnot there. But obviously there was other things there because, bone fragments and bullet fragments were there. Floyd Boring and Paul Paterni made their way to the White House garage. They actually were the ones who initiated the Secret Service inspection. Paul Paterni was a former OSS man. OSS was a precursor to the CIA. Floyd Boring is one of my suspects. He heads to the White House garage of his own volition, and they're the first 2 people there. So you got one of my suspects and a former OSS CIA guy there. So that's when the official story of the bullets in the front seat were found. Who knows? They were manipulating things, switching things. It's grist for the mill for paranoia, conspiracy, or whatnot. They were doing something. But then after that, the limousine, it's a little convoluted depending on who you want to believe. But supposedly it made its way back to either Cincinnati, Ohio, at Hess Eisenhower, or it made its way back to Dearborn, Michigan, the Ford Motor Company. And that's when the Men Who Killed Kennedy with the late Doug Weldon talked about how the limousine was switched out. He had a witness, Ferguson, I think it was, who basically a deathbed confession, wanted no money, no nothing. And he wrote a letter. And part of it was after he died, you could talk about this. Is that, oh, yeah, we had the windshield that had a hole in it. Secret Service told us not to say anything. And again, we got Joe Palella, who was a White House detail agent, coming out corroborating it. Charles Taylor wrote a letter, wrote a report, and it was also during the church committee. I think he testified about the hole in the windshield as well. You had all that. It adds up that there's something shady going on, because there's even now photo analysis that take with a grain of salt. There's some research to claim you can see the hole in certain photos, maybe, maybe not. But I go more with the actual statements of former Secret Service agents and the chicanery and the lack of a chain. People talk about the lack of a chain of custody with C-399, a magic bullet. Well, the limousine is very convoluted as well. But the bottom line is that should have been preserved. The federal government, what they did instead is they just refurbished it, made it bulletproof, and they put a permanent top on for LBJ, and he painted it black instead of Kennedy blue. And LBJ actually used that limousine, and I don't know if the poor man didn't know, but there's films and photos of Robert Kennedy riding in the limousine with LBJ. But the bottom line, the federal government couldn't afford a new limousine. You know what this would be like? This is tantamount to Lincoln's killed at Ford's Theater. Hey, we can clean that blood. Let's use this chair again for subsequent presidents. So 5 presidents after are going to use this chair. Damn it, just clean up that blood a little bit. What did they do? They preserved the chair, but no, the limousine. We're just going to refurbish that deathmobile where a president was murdered. And hey, okay, we're going to have this limousine. It was for LBJ, Nixon, Ford, and either Carter or Mondale briefly used it. It was retired in either 77 or 78, but it was used during Nixon's second inaugural in January 73. I have video of it on my YouTube channel, and it's just like, it's obscene. He's using it during an inaugural parade. Millions of people are seeing him like waving, smiling. He's in the little canopy rooftop, sunroof. He's sitting there waving the people out of it. It's like, oh my God, a president was murdered in it, and he's using this for an inaugural. But the bottom line in all this is it should have been preserved, and it wasn't. So it's valuable evidence ruined. The magic bullet has no chain of possession at all. Is anybody who's seen the JFK Revisited documentary? And then when you factor in Paul Landis's late day tales. That's why, I mean, Robbie, we started us off with it's tough because you have a lot of facts, you got a lot of good authors and researchers out there, but it's polluted with wild theories and some of this convoluted muck that really makes it tough. I really feel sorry for people, because Paul Landis' book was a runaway bestseller, but it was like a bait and switch. A lot of poor people out there were interested in the case. Just regular John Q. citizen probably like, oh, so much of this book has nothing to do with the Kennedy assassination. Oh, finally, what about the Kennedy assassination? But he never talks about the ramifications of finding a bullet, why it was so important about this bullet to begin with. No one will ever know. What's this mean? What does this mean, this magic bullet? And they would never realize there's a controversy, because supposedly the magic bullet was found by someone else. So it's a shame, but I think it was just a way for an old man to collect some money, and boy, did he ever. It was a bait and switch, because everybody thought the whole book was going to be about the assassination, but very little of it is. So,
Well, there's an importance for researchers or people that have known the story and don't want to keep rehashing the same details, where your work comes into play, where you focus on the Secret Service, an area that a lot of people just seem to neglect or not really talk a whole lot about, unless it's something to deal with, like maybe Clint Hill seeing a hole in the back of Kennedy's head. But when we're talking about like very light touch conspiracy, very like key with that word here. How much do you believe when it comes to them just protecting their reputations on the things that they didn't do to protect Kennedy? And then how much for just an average dislike of Kennedy, whether it's the Catholic stuff or whether they just didn't like his policies and the way that they thought he was taking the country at that point?
right. I do think, to be fair, again, I think a lot of these agents were just following orders. They were covering up their reputations, because these were the agents that lost a president. They took over in 1901, when McKinley was assassinated and Teddy Roosevelt took over. Well, the Secret Service became an official bodyguard of the president. They had never lost a president. Even JFK, when Chief Riley took over for Huey Bauman, said, "This man has never lost a president. For that, he deserves a promotion." And everybody laughed. And Chief Riley ended up losing a president. But the bottom line is, yeah, I definitely think there's definitely a reputational factor in this. But here's a big but. There's several agents that believe there was a conspiracy. There's several agents I think crossed the line. Floyd Boring, planner of the Texas trip, Emory Roberts, who is the commander of that follow-up car, ordered the agents back. You had Bill Gurr, the driver of the car, who had a very strange feelings about Kennedy, and he replaced the dead agent, Thomas Shipman. Before you can catch your breath, there's several agents that came out in 1997, not only for Seymour Hersh's book, Dark Side of Camelot, they also came out in a Tom Jennings ABC special that I have on my YouTube channel. It's called Dangerous Years, the Kennedy Days, or something like that. Or yeah, I think it was something like that, Dangerous Years, or whatnot. And 4 agents, including Tim McIntyre, who was one of the follow-up car agents, talk about their anger and disgust over President Kennedy's private life. That President Kennedy allegedly, had sex without his wife with women across the country, during trips and whatnot. Tim McIntyre, actually, again, he's feet away from Kennedy, charged with protecting the man. He says on this 1997 special, prostitution, that's illegal. Procurement, that's illegal. When you have a president who's a procurer of prostitutes, makes you think, well, what else do they think of us? And he talks for the dead Emory Roberts. Emory Roberts died in 1973, but McIntyre speaks for him and says that Emory Roberts pulled him aside and says, you're going to see a lot of stuff here. You're going to see a lot of stuff with the president. Don't even talk to your wife about it. He says that Emory Roberts was very concerned about it, talked about it a lot. So when the shots rang on, did some of these men give it a few seconds? Mission accomplished. So they didn't fire any bullets, the Secret Service. Action through inaction. Just couple seconds, just like with the Reagan assassination attempt. Imagine a Jerry Parr and those wonderful heroes, and I mean that not sarcastically. Those men were wonderful. All they had was agile minds, fleetness of foot. March 31st, 1981, they protected Reagan. They pushed him in the limousine. One, Tim McCarthy, used his body as a shield for a bullet, took a bullet right in the stomach, et cetera, et cetera. Well, all it took was a few seconds of letting it happen. And there you go. And we have a Texan in the White House now. Emory Roberts is another one of my major discoveries, little old amateur me out here. Turns out Emory Roberts became appointment secretary to Lyndon Johnson while still an active agent. This is unprecedented. This has never happened before. I spoke to other agents who told me, yeah, that's never happened before. We never had an active agent who became part of the administration of the president they're protecting. In fact, in 1965, there were newspaper articles. I think they were asking, what's his name, George Reedy, who was LBJ's one press secretary. They were saying, why is the Secret Service agent there at the front of the Oval Office greeting the Japanese prime minister? And it came out that he replaced Dave Powers, who also rode in the follow-up
Oh
car,
shit, the
Kennedy's
U2
loyal
crash.
aide.
Yeah.
Emory Roberts replaced, no, Dave Powers was the one of JFK's aides. It was his best friends in congressional days. Dave Powers and Kenny O'Donnell. They were the two presidential aides who rode in the follow-up car. Well, Dave Powers was the unofficial appointment secretary to Kennedy. His desk was taken over by Emory Roberts, who was still a Secret Service agent. So in other words, when the assassination began, I talk about this in the coup in Camelot, Sam Kinney confirmed to me that Emory Roberts ordered the agents not to move when the assassination began. He actually ordered not to move. So not only did he order 2 agents back at Love Field, when the assassinations began, he ordered the agents not to move. And Sam Kinney says, oh, exactly right, exactly right. He only sat a few feet away from him. And then Sam Kinney kind of tried to cover him and says, well, he didn't think that the agents could do anything. And when I spoke to another agent, Dan Emmett, he told me, that's ridiculous. We're there to cover and evacuate. Our whole reason we're there is to not care about our own bodily harm, but to see there's no bodily harm to the chief executive. They should have lunged forward, even if it was in vain. But that's the reason why no one other than Clint Hill, who was there for Jacqueline Kennedy, mind you, not for President Kennedy, did what he did, albeit late, after he drank the night before, stayed up late, whatnot. So you have Emory Roberts, who goes on. He even went to get to Parkland Hospital. It's in Manchester, the death of a president. Keep in mind, Manchester interviewed a fair amount of these agents, including Emory Roberts. He says, Emory Roberts said to his boss, Roy Kellerman is his boss, he says, you stay with Kennedy. I'm going to Johnson. Emory Roberts was the one who told LBJ to get on Air Force One. And Emory Roberts is rewarded at becoming appointment secretary to Johnson during the administration. In fact, LBJ in 1968 thanked the Secret Service agent in his actual transcript. What he said, oh, Emory Roberts, he couldn't be here tonight, but he greets me every morning and says goodnight to me every night.
That's scary. That's fucking
Yeah, that's
scary.
pretty scary. So you talk about motive and wow, well, why would he do what he did? Bill Greer, supposedly all traumatized on what happened. He lied through his teeth to the Warren Commission and started to lay the blame to the FBI agents that maybe the president ordered him to slow down. Well, he served under LBJ, drove LBJ. So it's like he quit. He was all traumatized. He stayed till 1966. He stayed till 3 years later. So it wasn't like, oh, I'm all traumatized. Jacqueline Kennedy in private blamed Greer. She said he might as well have been Maud Shaw. Maud Shaw was the older nanny for the kids. So he might as well have been Maud Shaw. And she said to her one friend, get yourself a good driver so that nothing ever happens to you. But now here's the thing. That's why you got to weigh and consider everything. She also wrote Bill Greer a nice letter, little letter saying, thank you for all you did to the president. You were with him till the end. Now it could be taken one, two ways. You were with him to the end, or you were with him to the end. But this is what I talk about. You always got to look at two sides of the story. Someone could look at the many letters of J. Edgar Hoover and Bobby Kennedy and say, look like they liked each other. I know I've heard all these stories for decades that Hoover and RFK hated each other and vice versa. But there's these letters saying, Dear Bob, thank you very much. Well, that's the public persona. It's like you can hate your boss's guts, but to his face, you can say, oh, thanks very much. Love you. I've had fast bosses I couldn't stand in prior jobs, but, to save face, it looks like you liked him. Vince looks like you got along with him. Well, that's just the public persona. That's what Bobby Kennedy, as Attorney General, the president's brother, and J. Edgar Hoover did hate each other. But there's letters that make you believe otherwise. Same thing with Jacqueline Kennedy. She wrote some of the agents short notes when she left the White House, and one of them was to Bill Greer. And again, some people have used that like you were with the president to the end, or you were with the president to the end.
Yeah.
But again, what she told her one friend, and it came out. In fact, Marty Vanger, former Secret Service agent, his book also confirmed that Jacqueline Kennedy blamed Greer. So again, it only takes three men, in this case, to action through inaction, and everyone's following orders. Yeah, these agents coming out in 1997. One of them speaks for Emory Roberts about their concern and anger over President Kennedy's private life. One of them's Tim McIntyre in the fob car. It certainly leads to suspicion or more that these men wanted adulterer out of the White House and someone who might have been better about Vietnam and civil rights and things like that. Because you got to keep in mind something too. It's hard to believe now, but back in the 50s and 60s, divorce was a scarlet letter, baby. If you got a divorce back then, you were like, oh, that person, I heard Mildred got a divorce. Now everyone laughs. Celebrities get divorced at the drop of a hat every day. Divorce rate's 50%, but that used to be a scarlet letter. Adultery used to be a scarlet letter. Hard to believe now with the social mores and the world is now TMZ and everyone's showing 90% of their body on TV and everything. But it used to be a time social mores were different. So again, I love President Kennedy. His one fatal weakness is he had a secret private life when it came to women.
It's
Although
fun.
a lot of it was exaggerated, but I love the guy anyway. Part of it was because he learned from his dad, and he was given the last rites several times, and he was a very good-looking man, the leader of the free world. These women were throwing themselves at him, as Evelyn Lincoln, his secretary, said. These women were throwing themselves at him. It wasn't like a Clinton thing, or he was like overcoming these women against their will. No, they were throwing themselves at him. Doesn't make any excuse, but these agents are guarding hotel door rooms. They're seeing and hearing what's going on. Level of disgust. So I think what it is some of these agents knew something was afoot, or they just said to themselves, something happens, I'm not going to do jack squat if something does happen. So conscious, unconscious, you have agents hamstrung by their supervisor saying, don't move. When assassination begins, Emory Roberts, and again, Sam Kinney, it's on the coup in Camelot. I got Sam Kinney confirming it to me in 1994. Exactly right. Exactly right. He ordered him not to move, and then he kind of stumbles. Whoa, whoa, yeah, he did that because he didn't think the agents could get the back of car in time. But again, when another agent told me, that's not what you do. Whether it's successful or unsuccessful, your job is to rush forward, to lunge. Even if you're not successful, you're supposed to do your damn job, not say, "Oh, we won't have time, boys. Forget it. Let them die. Let them die." You don't do that. And some I omitted earlier, didn't even talk about the bubble top. It's been a myth that Kennedy ordered that bubble top off and all this other crap. Sam Kinney, the driver of the follow-up car, was adamant to me on 3 different occasions that he, Sam, was solely responsible for the top's removal. Kennedy had nothing to do with it. Kenny O'Donnell had nothing to do with it. It turned out it was not till many years later, compiling films and photos, 1/3 of Kennedy's motorcades, he used the bubble top. He's sitting there smiling, ear to ear grin in a bubble top, bright sunshiny day. I thought he didn't like the bubble top. I thought he only used the bubble top during rain. Wrong answer. He used it one third of his motorcades, and that's. And Sam Kinney said he lived. It was 30 years at that time. I live a 30-year decision. I've had guilt over this, guilt over my decision. Is I decided to do it because it was a nice day, and I thought maybe he'd like extra air and whatnot, and he did what he did. But it was Sam's decision, not JFK. This other stupid stuff about it. Supposedly Bill Moyers, a low LBJ aide, said, "Get that goddamn bubble top off unless it's raining." Bill Moyers wouldn't have the authority. He's a vice presidential LBJ. It'd be like a Mike Pence aide telling a Trump person what to do. They'd look at him like laugh, like, what are you talking about? You have no authority to tell us what to do. That's the same thing here. But people run with it because they want to believe LBJ did it. So, hey, get that goddamn bubble top off. It's an LBJ. Hey, it's good for me. See, sometimes it's whatever someone's pet theory is, but this is an actual Secret Service agent was there who had guilt over it. I believe Sam Kinney a hell of a lot more than other people would say, well, Vin, what's your take on it? O'Donnell Powers came out with a book 10 years later. And O'Donnell, not in so many words, but he kind of says that he was responsible for the bubble toss removal. I think he was just trying to sell books like Paul Landis. Paul Landis made up fibs years later, and Kenny O'Donnell. Not all these people want to walk on water. Sometimes it's for a little bit of action, baby. And it was a selling point of his book, Johnny. We hardly knew ye. That was the big selling point of that book. Ooh, he's claiming he took the top, that he ordered the top off. So it put the onus on Kenny O'Donnell. Buy my book. Hey, it's good. You'll know now. Just like when Gerald Blaine came out of the Kennedy detail, his big thing is he's claiming he accidentally almost killed LBJ. No one ever heard of this tall tale before, but he's claiming that night after the assassination, he was guarding the Oaks. I think it's LBJ's vice presidential office, and LBJ rounded the corner, and Gerald Blaine had a Thompson submachine gun and almost mowed him down. So my God, we could have lost two presidents. Buy my book. It's only $13.99. It's all bull. It was all because you can't prove it, can't corroborate it, can't deny it. So, but it sounds good. Oh wow, this form rating that made the news everywhere. That was a selling point for his book. I can't tell you how many articles and television spots I saw. This agent lost a president and almost was responsible for another one. General Blaine, welcome to the show. Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, what's this about? Oh, I almost killed OBJ that night. It's all selling points. But see, the problem is a lot of people believe it. They'll be like, "Hey, this guy's a former agent. It's good enough for me." But you have to weigh and consider why people are saying what they're saying. Again, I wouldn't believe Gerald Bain, the head of the White House detail, if he was out there on an island and all the other agents told me, Vince, no, 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 Gerald Bain is mistaken. He did order us off the car. None of them told me that. They all corroborated him. That's why I believe that Kennedy did not order him off the car. You got to seek corroboration for things. And the corroboration for Sam Kinney, besides his credibility, was very high, was again, took years to find the films and photos. I'm like, oh my God, when President Kennedy visited this city, this country, whatnot, he says the bubble top, and it's not raining. He's smiling ear to ear. I thought he hated the bubble top. I read books that claimed that he hated the bubble top. Uh-oh. And before you can, one more bubble top, the top was often used in a partial configuration. Best of both worlds. You had the front and back piece on, but the middle piece was left open so the president could get air, temporarily stand. Car was usually moving at a fast pace, mind you, but it was the best of both worlds. Agents admitted that the bubble top was a deterrent. It would deflect a bullet. It would obscure an assassin's view via the sun glare off the metal strips and off the bubble top itself. And here's a $64 million question. Would an assassin or assassins, being Oswald or anyone else, fired at the limousine with the top on? Because the overriding myth was it was bulletproof. Everybody and their mother, even Forrest Soros, submitted a report before the assassination saying the bulletproof bubble top will be delivered to Dallas. Everybody believed it. So would an assassin up there in the sixth floor and or down the grassy knoll fired on it because, hey, it's not bulletproof, but they all thought it was bulletproof. So it was a psychological deterrent because they would have thought, abort, abort, the top's on, damn it. But now the top wasn't on. But again, they could have had the best of both worlds to satisfy Jackie and JFK, front and rear pieces on. That's why there's always like little shades of gray in this. And so yeah, but like I said, it took years and years to discover this. It took little old me in the wilderness interviewing these guys out of nowhere, surviving harassment at work and at home and online, and trying to beat the big media machine. I mean, I'm on a very nice, I'd say double A, maybe triple A publisher, but they're on the major leagues publisher, Simon and Schuster. So they got me beat by a country mile. I get on C-SPAN a little bit, but then you got Blaine and Hill on, CNN, Fox, ABC, NBC. I can't compete with that. Luckily, I made a lot of inroads with John Q. Citizen for somebody who's doing on a lower level, but they basically won because they're out there with book signings, and these old timers come up to them. Oh, it's a shame Kennedy didn't want you to do these things, huh? Hey, I loved your book. Meantime, it's bull, but
I got
buy
one
my book,
last
baby.
Yeah, I got
Good.
one last question for you, and it's kind of super important when it comes to the amount of who do you think knew more information than they let on and might not be with us that might have taken some secrets to the grave, and who is still alive that might have some more information. The reason I asked this was on our first discussion, I had mentioned to you about Walter Coughlin. Now, at the time, you said you really haven't heard of the name, but I think you do. Yeah,
Oh
when I
yeah,
asked, yeah, okay, so my grandma almost married him. So yeah, so
what? I
yes,
corresponded with him many times, email and correspond. Oh yeah, I'm much aware, Walt.
so I
Walt did my
didn't
book.
I didn't know about this until after my grandma passed and I got all her JFK material. So like
Robbie, that's crazy.
I sent you a photo of JFK, a photo of him at the standing in front of the White House. It's all in my grandmom's stuff. She has photos of her and Walter Coughlin together when they were dating and
Oh,
they almost
hey,
got
send me
married.
those again. I don't know why. I
But
don't remember you
I
saying this.
watched an
Good.
interview you had on your YouTube channel with him, and I watched it. I guess it was from the Sixth Floor Museum, or it was from somewhere. He gave a speaking engagement, but he was being asked questions, and he was kind of dodging the main point to it, or acting like he didn't remember. Now,
He
I give
believed the
him
mafia was involved. He think
that's
he think there was
yeah.
a conspiracy in mafia. He thinks Oswald and mobsters killed Kennedy, which is something. At least he's alluding there was a conspiracy more than one shooter. I'll give him that. Oh, he was a real nice guy in the early millennium. Oh my God, we emailed countless times. I can't. I corresponded with him through the snail mail once or twice, but then he gave me his email, and we went crazy until he found out Gerald Blamus had told him about me. That he stopped talking to me. But for like a year there, 2004. Oh my God, it's like every night I'm emailing back and forth. He joined the course too. He put in writing that Kennedy didn't order us off the car, and he was joined the chorus line of all that too. And yeah, yeah, Walt. That's amazing. I didn't know. Either you said that, Robbie, and I forgot, which is unlike me, or I don't know.
I couldn't even find him when I searched up his name. I was trying to figure out like am I spelling it incorrectly or something, and then
Yeah,
I
Coughlin,
yeah.
Coughlin.
And
Yeah.
then I finally found him and I started seeing what trips he was involved in. And I guess he didn't go on the Dallas trip. He wasn't involved in that one. But I guess there's
But
that
he was on the
theory.
Texas trip, just not Dallas.
Yeah, there was the
Yeah, he was in
theory that
Houston. I think Houston, San Antonio. I think he was maybe even in Austin. He just wasn't in Dallas per se. But yeah.
but there's a theory out there that all the good Secret Service members were taken off the Dallas trip and that it was a lot of newbies and rookies and people that really hadn't had any experience. Now, is there weight to that?
Yes, there is. I make this analogy to lay people because they can understand this. Imagine you're the Patriots. You're going to the Super Bowl. Hey, Tom Brady, we don't need you, pal. There's a third stringer out of college. He's hardly worked. We're going to have him, you know, start for the Super Bowl. Make sense? Well, that's what they did in Dallas. Roy Kellerman. Now, Roy Kellerman was in the Secret Service since FDR, but he was a third stringer. Number one agent was Gerald Bain, who took his first vacation during the week of the assassination. So he missed the Florida trip and the Texas trip. Allegedly, it was a vacation, but it was his first one. Clint Hill and name I mentioned earlier, Sam Kinney, both corroborate this. Clint Hill, shockingly, in his books, and Sam Kinney to me years before Clint Hill's book, saying, yeah, that Gerald Bain was at the agency for years, and during the first time during the Kennedy years, he took a vacation. Floyd Boring, his number two assistant, okay, direct assistant, was in charge of planning the Texas trip, like he admitted to the Truman Library, JFK Library, and others that he was in charge of all the advance work, but he wasn't physically there. He was in Maryland at home when the assassination happened, but he was on the Florida trip. He was on the Florida trip instead of Bain. Roy Kellerman went as a third stringer. It was Bain, Boring, and Kellerman. So again, this is a trip that William Fulbright, Senator Fulbright, Pierre Salinger, and others warned Kennedy, don't make this trip to Dallas. In fact, Marty Underwood said, JFK said to him, oh, Marty, you worry about me too much. And Henry Gonzalez said Kennedy told him the night before, oh, the Secret Service told me they took care of everything, Henry. There's nothing to worry about. Yeah, we had a third stringer who was very inept. Roy Kellerman, when the shooting began, he didn't lunge back there. He didn't take more action. He just grabbed the radio microphone, okay? And he's staring back at Kennedy like Greer is. So he was inept. Now, to Roy Kellerman's credit, he did testify to the Warren Commission. A flurry of shells came into the car. There has to be more than three shots, gentlemen. If you look at the films and photos, you'll see otherwise. And he also, described the wound as being the back of the head. The back wound didn't go through the neck that night at the autopsy. So there are things that kind of, are good for Roy Kellerman on the good side of things. But the bottom line is he was usurped. This goes to show you, Emory Roberts, they get the parking lot officer, goes, "You stay with Kennedy, Kellerman. I'm staying with Johnson." And he totally usurped his boss. If Bain was there or Boring, they wouldn't have got away with things. I think Bain and Boring would have saw, okay, what's going on? Are men going to be patrolling the rooftops? Why isn't anybody in the rear of the car? Why do we have less motorcycles around the car? But if you take a sinister look at it, I believe Boring was one of the ones that crossed the line. Floyd Boring was back and forth, as Win Lawson admitted to the House Select Committee. Win Lawson was the lead advance agent along with David Grant. David Grant was Clint Hill's brother-in-law. They were the two advance men for the White House detail. Back and forth with Boring. In my opinion, it was Boring who told him to reduce the motorcycles, not have agents in the back of the car. Floyd Boring is the agent who is the genesis of, well, officially, of not having agents on the back of the car. Okay. Clint Hill, when he testified to our inspector of the Warren Commission, he says, "Well, I wasn't there, but supposedly Floyd Boring heard from Kennedy to get the men off the back of the car. That's why they weren't there in Tampa, and that's why they weren't there in Dallas." Took years to discover. There's a big lie going on. They were on the back of the car for most of the motorcade in Tampa. And Floyd Boring's telling me, I got him on audio a couple of times, I got him in a letter. President Kennedy was very cooperative, never ordered the agents off the car. That's not true. That's not true. And the infamous page from William Manchester about "get the Ivy League charlatans off the back of the car," Kennedy allegedly claimed. Not only did Floyd Boring say that's not true, Floyd Boring was never interviewed by Manchester. You go to the notes, it's alphabetic order. There's no Floyd Boring interview. Who was interviewed by Manchester? Emory Roberts and Gerald Blaine of the Kennedy detail fame. Gerald Blaine came out in 2010 adamantly denying that he ever spoke to William Manchester. And I think the reason why he's lying, because there's a sourced interview from 1965, he's lying because he realized he's out there in the wilderness. Oh my God, it looks like this myth originated with Gerald Blaine. The Kennedy detail, Vince Palamara has called him out on it. Now he said, "I never spoke to William Manchester." I contact Wesleyan University, it has all William Manchester's files. They can't find Gerald Blaine's interview. And some of these other interviews aren't going to be released to the year 2060, 2060. Despite the ARB and saying let's release these, Jacqueline Kennedy's interviews, we infamously know is not going to be released till like decades after Caroline passes because John Jr.'s already gone. And several of the agents have been released. Their interviews have been released. Some of them have, but there's other ones that aren't. And he could not find Gerald Blaine, who's sourced in the book. Gerald, and here's the real drama. In 2005, Gerald Blaine, matter of factly, years before his book came out, told me, "Yeah, I was interviewed by Manchester. Jacqueline Kennedy authorized that some of the agents could speak to him." Now he's coming out and saying, "Oh, I never spoke to William Manchester," because he realizes with Floyd Boring denying that he ever was interviewed by Manchester, and it's true. You look in the back section of the book, everybody, alphabetic order. Here's the sources. There's no Boring interview. He's quoting Boring, but Boring's not interviewed. Who could have told us? Gerald Blaine. He was interviewed. That's why Gerald Blaine's denying it, because he realizes he's the actual source for claiming the agents were ordered off the back of the car. It's all BS, but he put that insipid myth, that lie into the record. And ever since then, it's been between Boring and him. Everyone's thought, well, Kennedy didn't want them off the back of the car. He had a rendezvous with death and he was careless in his personal life. He was careless with security, damn it. And that's why Oswald or a conspiracy was able to be successful. These men weren't there. And people might say, "Vince, if agents were in the back of a car, would Kennedy have lived?" Huge yes to that. Because if you believe Oswald at the London was only rear shooters, of course, they're blocking the view. If you also believe the shooters from the front, yes, they would have been there to spot anything, two more extra people closer to Kennedy. And also they would be able to cover Kennedy before the fatal shot made its mark. Kennedy, all doctors pretty much admitted for the most part, Kennedy would have lived with just the throat, whatnot, where the tracheostomy was. It would have been a recovery time, couldn't have spoke for months, but he would have lived. When he was just like this, he could have lived. But because no one was there, no one was close enough, fatal shot rings out, even for people that believe Oswald at alone. Bill Greer turns around twice, slows down the car, looks back at Kennedy twice. If he would have hit the gas, Kennedy lives. If Shipman would have drove, Kennedy didn't die in Camp David, Kennedy lives. No one's in the back of the car. There's no more eye near witnesses around the car with their guns and their law enforcement training. Instead, they're moved behind the rear wheels. Win Lawson, the lead advance agent, testifies that, well, my understanding is President Kennedy did a lot of motorcycles around the car.
That's who it
Alan,
was. That's who it
Alan,
was.
and guess what Alan Dulles says, Ravi? Says, were there any specific orders? He goes, no specific orders from him. Jaw dropping moment, but then when Lawson recovers, but it was my understanding he did a lot, but it's like, again, because the public was so naive. How many people got the 26 volumes of the Warren Commission back then? How many people compared and contrast? You couldn't compare and contrast because these films and photos of motorcades didn't come out till years later. The Haas Select Committee, to their eternal credit, did say it was uniquely insecure what the Secret Service did because in the prior Texas stop, he had many motorcycles around the car, just like he did in Tampa. Lord knows how many other trips there was many motorcycles around. So at the very least, more eye near witnesses, but also would have acted as a blanket of protection for Kennedy and whatnot. So you had that. So you had that's why when he gets to Dealey Plaza, he's killed, in my opinion. There's when it killed him on Main Street, too many witnesses, my God. Do that jog, that turn, because there was fewer witnesses, fewer people. Photographers were told to stay away, agents were told to stay away, motorcycles moved behind the car, no bubble top. The military man was told for the first time not to ride in the front seat between the driver and the agent in charge of the trip. Okay, but yet you have agents of mysterious repute on the knoll, I think were real agents. That's another story in itself. And what was allowed to happen was allowed to happen. Took just a few seconds. Okay, it's done. Oh, we're done. We're out of here. We're speeding off to Parkland Hospital, and the rest is history. So that's it. It's action through inaction. But took years for stuff. It was a fluke. A fluke. I came back from a trip to Cancun, Mexico in September 1992. I decided to call Gerald Bain as opposed to Blaine Bain. And he could have rained on my parade. That was the call that could have crushed my research. If he would have came out and said, well, yeah, there was many times the president told us not to be in the back car. This is the number one agent who has Kennedy's ear. The number one agent was in the vast majority of the trips. He was a lot. Here's Gerald Bain. Here's Clint Hill and Gerald Blaine. Way down here is Buck Privates, nobodies compared to him. And he's telling me, I don't remember Kennedy ever say anything about not having agents in the back of the car. If you look at the newsreels, you'll see agents on there. Oh, another thing I have to tell you, Robbie, in interest of time, I'll throw this out to you. Another major thing that Gerald Bain told me in that September phone call in 92. He said, oh, the House Select Committee asked me two things during executive session. He was interviewed by the staff, and that was released in the late 90s. He was also interviewed in executive session, and it's not been released. It's one of a couple executive sessions that was never released. But he told me what they asked him. Oh, they asked me about the Florida trip, and they asked me about why the motorcade route was changed in Dallas. Like, sir, so the motorcade route was changed in Dallas? He goes, oh, it was changed, but why? I've forgotten completely. I don't know. Even if you think he's lying and he knew why the motorcade route was changed, he's confirming that the route was changed in Dallas. So for years, people said, oh, these conspiracy muck and amucks. There's no truth that motorcade route changing. It should have went down that main Houston Elm jog. Get a life. Here was the number one agent of Kennedy's detail telling a stranger on the phone the motorcade route was changed in Dallas. Why it was changed, I don't know. And I threw out some names to him after I tried to recover. It was a second shocking event, like pinch me, I'm dreaming. I can't believe he's telling me this. David Grant, he was an advance agent. He does. Oh, David Grant wouldn't have the authority to change the route. Okay. What the hell did? Was it Win Lawson, his lead advance agent? Yeah, it came out 2 years later. David Grant was Clint Hill's brother-in-law through his ex-wife, Gwen. Yeah, Clint Hill remarried Lisa McCubbin, his co-author, who was young enough to be his daughter,
Yeah.
born in 1964, and he was born in 1932. Well, his former wife, the mother of his children, was Gwen, and her brother is David Grant, who was again. So in the early 90s, people were mystified. Vince, I never heard of these names. David Grant. I just started Winston Lawson in the late 90s. Vince, I never heard of Thomas Shipman. I only heard of Greer. It took little old me because people weren't concerned about the Secret Service. Everyone's obsessed with J. Edgar Hoover, the CIA, Allen Dulles, the mobsters. For years, Secret Service were the good guys. And people would always defend, oh, Clint Hill. Meantime, that son of a, you know what? He drank the night before, stayed up late. He's changed his for years, for decades, since the back of the head was gone. Now he's moving it to the side the last few years. You know why? Because he realizes the ramifications from conspiracy buffs. So now the wound was a side wound, but from 1963 to 2013, it was here. Now it's moved, I guess, through plastic surgery. So I moved over here now. Hey, and he doesn't believe the single bullet theory, just like Paul Lance doesn't believe the single bullet theory. But Oswald acted alone. What Governor Connolly and Dave Powers always said too. They didn't realize the ramifications. You can't have no single bullet theory and Oswald acted alone. So
Well, Vince, I'm glad that there's someone like yourself out there doing research, mostly for the researchers like myself or just people that are interested in the case that want to learn more specific details, but also for younger generations as well, too. As much as you probably know, we've lost a couple of great ones this year already, and it's important that we get a lot of people on the record when it comes to some of this information, just so it can stay out there and be a benefit to other people that are first coming across the case and want to know more about it. But where can people find your links, Vince?
Well, yeah, the easiest way to do it is just type in Google Vince Palamara. It's always Palamara, Vince Palamara. And immediately in that first page of Google, my Amazon page will come up with my 6 books, in 6 books coming out October of this year, Plot to Kill President Kennedy in Chicago. My blog will come up, my YouTube channels. I have two major channels. Well, one's like the major channel, the other one's a backup in case something happens. Um, Several of other podcasts and other things like that. But the first page of Google has everything on it between the books and the YouTube channel and the videos. And you can see all these prior motorcades, so you can do your own thinking, people out there, and you can see for yourself. I have one video I recommend to people, the master class in the Secret Service during the Kennedy years. It's like an hour and a half, and it's all the footage, motorcade footage, and photos and films I could compile of all the trips, foreign and domestic, and you can see for your own eyes. My God, look how many times the bubble top's on the car, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I
Thank you
really
so.
appreciate it, Robbie. Thanks a lot, man.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining me again. And I'm going to make sure to link all your links in the description. It's been a pleasure chatting. And thanks everybody for listening to this episode of Out of the Blank.